As the old adage goes, behind every successful man, there is not just a woman, but one of substance playing a pivotal role in that man's life. The story of Robert Mugabe is not any different, except that he was not an ordinary African man, but a brutal dictator or a national hero, depending on who tells the story. In both good and bad times, the wives of dictators put up with a lot that takes a woman of steel to endure. Not just corruption, murders, political uprising, or the pressure that comes with their new position in society, but also their husbands' extramarital affairs. In the same breath, it is impossible to discuss the Zimbabwean political landscape as well as Mugabe's 37-year rule without mention of his loving wife, Grace Mugabe. Not so many things bring Zimbabweans together, but Grace did so in so many different ways. She attracted love and hate in equal measures and won herself names like Disgrace, Fast Shopper, Gucci Grace, among others from her detractors, both within the ruling party ZANU-PF and the opposition. Yet to her supporters, she was a philanthropist and a businesswoman worth of emulating. As for Grace, however, her name of choice was Amai, meaning Mother of the Nation. Fasten your seatbelts and allow Bronx media to take you on the roller coaster of the rise and fall of Grace Mugabe, Zimbabwe's former First Lady. This story begins in a courtroom in March 1964. Robert Mugabe, a freedom fighter, is being tried. His crime is issuing subversive statements. The judge asks Robert to retract his statement, but he chooses to stand by it. Consequently, he is found guilty and sentenced to Zimbabwe's maximum security prison to serve 21 months. While in prison, another comrade arrives. His name Emerson Dambuzo Mnangagwa, the leader of a crocodile gang who was convicted of blowing up a train. The two strike up a friendship that would be very important for the future of Zimbabwe. For the purpose of this story, however, the life of Grace Mugabe, to which their friendship would be tested to the maximum, will be our center of attention. Grace Mugabe was born to Johnston Marufu and Ida Marufu in 1965. Grace attended primary school in Chivu and high school at Christ Mambo. Upon graduation from high school, Grace joined college and got a secretarial qualification, which landed her a plum job in the office of the president. This would be the beginning of a life full of glitz and glamour, a life that every young woman dreamt of. At the age of 19, she got married to Stanley Golilaza, an Air Force pilot, and together had a son called Russell. At her newfound job, Grace worked in the typing pool where she had regular close encounters with the president, and this led to the most significant office romances on the African continent. The affair paid off for Grace as she quickly rose through the ranks, getting herself promoted from the typing pool to Mugabe's personal assistant. In her position as the president's personal assistant, she got to travel with the president on both domestic and foreign trips. Due to this close relationship, Grace and the president struck off a secret affair in the guise of official duty. Things got serious, yielding two offsprings, a girl called Bona, named after Mugabe's mother, and a boy named Robert Mugabe Jr., despite the fact that they were both still legally married to their spouses at the time. Mugabe was married to a Ghanaian-born Saleh Haifron, a companion from his fighting days. Saleh was beloved in the country for her revolutionary pedigree, kindness, and concern for the poor. However, none of that prevented Mugabe's adulterous encounters with Grace Marufu. Saleh Francisca Mugabe Haifron died of kidney failure on the 27th day of January 1992. When he lost Sally, some say Mugabe lost his moral compass. It didn't take long before Mugabe and Grace's affair went public. When this happened, Golilaza, that is Grace Marufu's husband, would not take it, and as a result developed a drinking problem that eventually led to the end of the marriage. In August 1996, the 31-year-old Grace married 72-year-old Robert Mugabe in a lavish mega marriage ceremony that came to be known as the mother of all weddings in Zimbabwe. The event, that was attended by over 600 people, including Nelson Mandela and several other heads of state. Grace, a former personal assistant to the president, had now become the First Lady of Zimbabwe. In the position, powerful men and women would kneel before her and sing her praises. Just a mere mention of her name would leave many quacking in their boots. She would later on become the gateway to the aging Mugabe. She would decide what he had and what he responded to. Hupombe is a Chishona word of Mugabe's tribe, meaning adultery. Now this is exactly what Mugabe did with Grace before their eventual marriage. Well, according to tradition, this had consequences, meaning that Mugabe had to pay a fine in form of cattle to the Air Force pilot whose wife he had snatched, and also pay one to the tribal chiefs. However, Comrade Mugabe had other ideas. He instead dispatched the officer to China, claiming to be sending him for further studies. On completion, he was posted to the Zimbabwe High Commission in Beijing as a defense attaché. Whereas diplomats served 4 to 5 years, Golilaza served 26 years at the station in Beijing until Mugabe's death. Mugabe's message was obvious. He was not taking any chances. In the early years of her marriage, Grace struggled to emerge from Sally's shadow. She was a quiet first lady and not much was heard about her. She mainly focused on her charity work. However, quite early in her marriage, her life was marred with rumors of extramarital affairs with various high-profile individuals and businessmen in the capital, Harare. Peter Pamela, a young, handsome, and upcoming businessman, died in a horrific car accident in 1996, the same year that Grace got married to Mugabe. The death of Pamela has remained mysterious in Zimbabwe to date. Allegations that he was shot before the accident have never been investigated. In fact, one of the intelligence officers revealed the news that he was part of the team that had been tasked to assassinate Pamela by the president. It is believed that Pamela was targeted because he was allegedly having an affair with Grace. The most recent was Gideon Ngono, who was the central bank governor, financial advisor, and political ally of Mugabe. Ngono was also accused of a 5-year affair with Grace. Mugabe found out about the affair when his sister Sabina revealed the scandal on her deathbed. Refusing to believe the allegation, the president later on consulted his trusted bodyguard, King Chademana, who had sat on in the meeting with Sabina. The bodyguard said he knew about the affair all along, but thought it was best to keep quiet. Later, he was found dead amid speculations that he had been poisoned. When confronted about the alleged affair, Grace feigned ignorance of all of them. For 18 years, Grace devoted her energies to lavish shopping trips instead of interfering in politics. Before travel bans were imposed on Zimbabwe's elite, Grace would borrow a plane from the National Fleet and head off for London or Paris. In London, she was a regular at Harold, where she spent over £40,000 in a single shopping spree. While in Paris, it wasn't unusual for her to spend $75,000 in a single shopping afternoon. She justified spending thousands of pounds on her favorite shoes, saying she had a narrow feet and could only wear Ferragamo. I have narrow feet and I can only wear Ferragamo. During her daughter's wedding in 2014, she splashed a whopping £3 million of state money on the event, treating herself to a £300,000 Rolls-Royce for the occasion. Prior to the couple's marriage, Grace used £500,000 of state funds to build a 30-bedroom mansion which she named Gracelands. When the court ruled that the coal taken to the Harare property were illegal, she sold it to Gaddafi for £3 million and kept the proceeds. Just like an apple does not fall far from the tree and a snake only hatches a snake, her excessive spending habits have also been seen in some of her children. Russell, the elder son from her previous marriage, imported 2 Rolls-Royce limousines into the country in 2017 using state funds. His half-brother Chatunga, whom Mugabe nicknamed the Undertaker for his perennial poor grades in school, filmed himself pouring £200 worth of champagne over his diamond-encrusted $60,000 watch. In the post, Chatunga said, "60K on the wrist when your dad runs the country." During her 20th wedding anniversary, she bought herself a $1.3 million ring, then suddenly cancelled the purchase after the diamond had already been prepared by the dealer. She then demanded for a refund from the dealer, telling him to wire the money to an offshore bank account in Dubai. The dealer refused because he believed it would be considered money laundering, but agreed to reimburse the First Lady in installments. The First Lady was not pleased and, as a show of might, took possession of 3 of the dealer's properties to teach him a lesson. The message was very clear: you do not mess with the Mugabes. In 2002, during Mugabe's agrarian revolution, which involved the redistribution of farm owned by white farmers, the First Lady was one of the first and major beneficiaries. She personally evicted white farmers from her 2,500-acre iron mask estate, creating the biggest dairy company in Southern Africa called Alpha and Omega. With all the wealth looted, she purchased homes in Dubai, South Africa, Malaysia, with further reports of property holdings in Hong Kong, including a diamond cutting business. In 2013, Grace launched one of her most ambitious projects, the My Mugabe School. She contracted a Chinese company to construct the school with funding from Grace Mugabe Foundation, which was financed by the taxpayers' money. In addition, the school used state funds to siphon more money through bogus bursary schemes. In the project, the government was paying school fees for 18 students to the tune of $200,000. The unstoppable Grace was also the mastermind behind the Blue Roof Mansion, the official residence of the Mugabes. The property sits on 44 acres with 25 bedrooms, each with an ensuite and a spa, plus a series of offices with an estimated value of $10 million. The opulent mansion was fenced off from the public and protected with a multi-million radar system. It was against the law to take pictures of the house. WikiLeaks back in 2001 said the full extent of President Mugabe's assets is unknown, but rumored to exceed $1 billion. With all the wealth, pomp and glamour that came with being the First Lady, reality dawned on Grace that soon her aged husband won't be around for long. Without him, it would be difficult for her to maintain all the wealth and sustain the lavish lifestyles the First Lady status accorded her. For that reason, she started laying a strategy for life without Mugabe. To achieve this, she would have to attempt something that would make or break her. Grace put her aim to focus on the highest office in the land, the presidency. In 2014, the ruling party ZANU-PF confirmed Robert Mugabe as its candidate for the 2018 general elections. At the time, Mugabe was 92 years old and had ruled the country for over 35 years, raising the possibility of his rule lasting until 2023. By then, he would be 99 years of age, so Grace started scheming. First, she identified the fact that in the event that the president died, the Zimbabwean constitution states that the vice president assumes office for the remainder of the term. For that reason, she had to become the vice president at all costs. With a plan at hand, she identified friends and allies that would enable her to execute it. However, her political ambitions split up ZANU-PF, creating factions that further stressed the already frail Mugabe. By 2014, the First Lady's popularity had sharply declined. In order to raise her status among the people, especially the elite, she earned a doctorate in sociology in a record 3 months from the University of Zimbabwe. On the other hand, however, her thesis had never been filed or seen by anybody, despite it being the basis upon which the PhD was awarded. That notwithstanding, her doctorate credentials were used on her campaign banners as she prepared to take over the leadership of ZANU-PF and was officially referred to as Dr. Grace Mugabe. In August 2014, ZANU-PF Women's League voted Grace as its chairperson, propelling her into the party's innermost decision-making body known as the Politburo. In this position, Grace was able to attack anybody who stood in her way to the presidency. At this point in time, a new character has to be brought to the scene. This is none other than Joyce Mujuru. Joyce Mujuru was a decorated veteran, a minister since 1980, and the vice president of Zimbabwe for 10 years. A widow of General Solomon Mujuru, who died in 2011 under unclear circumstances on his farm, Joyce enjoyed undeniable legitimacy. Being the vice president, she was next in line in the event that Mugabe died, making her the perfect target for Grace. Grace Mugabe, with Emerson Dambuzo Mnangagwa, the then Minister of Justice, launched a campaign against Grace. They labeled her and called her all sorts of names, alleging that she was a conspirator determined to avenge her husband's death and seize power. In December 2014, Joyce lost her position in the party leadership, and shortly afterwards, Mugabe dismissed her from her position as vice president, along other 8 ministers thought to be close to her. Mugabe replaced her with Emerson Dambuzo Mnangagwa. For decades, Mnangagwa executed the wishes of Robert Mugabe without hesitation. As Minister of Security in 1983, he supervised the Gukurahundi massacre in Matebele land that resulted in the death of over 20,000 people within a period of just 9 months. Mnangagwa, a former ally of Grace against Joyce, became the next target. By choosing Mnangagwa, Mugabe made things harder for himself, as he had not only his loyal friend and confidant to deal with, but his family or wife interests to safeguard. With the stakes so high for both Mnangagwa and Grace, each one of them sought to solidify a backup base. Mnangagwa retreated to a Lacoste group that comprised of ZANU-PF veterans, while Grace formed Generation 40, popularly referred to as G40. G40's agenda was generational change, and as a result had all intentions and purpose to replace the old guards with the young Turks. G40 and Grace intensified the campaign to have Mugabe re-elected as president and have him resign in favor of Grace, hence automatically ascending to the presidency of Zimbabwe. This plan was fully backed by Mugabe, and so the showdown began. In early 2017, Grace took Mugabe on exhausting countrywide pre-election campaign meetings that saw the old man sleep at every opportunity. In addition, Grace held secret meetings at her Blue Roof mansion, forging the way forward on how to neutralize Mnangagwa. Things got intense between the factions who had similar ideologies, views, and vision for the country. In August 2017, during a ZANU-PF youth rally, Mnangagwa consumed an ice cream from Grace Mugabe's dairy farm and was taken ill, whereupon he was airlifted to South Africa for specialized treatment. At some point, it was rumored that he had died, but to Grace's dismay, he returned to Zimbabwe. Mnangagwa and his faction accused Grace of lacing his food with poison. When confronted with the accusations, Grace laughed it off and said, "Why would I kill Mnangagwa? Who is Mnangagwa on this earth? Killing someone my husband made? It does not make any sense." Mnangagwa and his wife were later seen at public functions, but refused to eat any food served by waiters. In October of the same year, while in Bulawayo, Grace launched another attack at the vice president, stating that traitors and usurpers will be eliminated. Mnangagwa replied a month later, indirectly attacking the First Lady. The First Lady jumped out of her chair to deliver an immediate response, but was met with boos from the crowd that mainly comprised of ZANU-PF veterans who waved toy crocodiles, Mnangagwa's political symbol. President Mugabe, who at the time was in deep slumber, woke up amid the screams and intervened, stating, "You insult and deny Grace, the First Lady, on behalf of Mnangagwa? All right, I will fire him." True to his words, on the 6th of November of the same year, Mnangagwa was dismissed, excluded from the party, and his personal bodyguards disarmed. To Mnangagwa, this was an obvious message that his arrest was imminent. So the next day, he left the capital city disguised in his wife's king sunglasses and a wide safari hat. He headed towards the Mozambican border in the company of his sons and a handful of bodyguards. With him was a Louis Vuitton bag containing $8,000 that he used to bribe his way to Mozambique and later on to Joburg in South Africa. While in exile, Mnangagwa made a statement to Grace and Mugabe saying, "ZANU-PF is not personal property for you and your wife to do as you please." Now that Mnangagwa was out of the way, President Mugabe was scheduled to appoint his wife as vice president in a grand ceremony. With excitement, Grace Mugabe made preparations for the ceremony, but nothing would go as planned. Up until this point, they hadn't done anything much with the army. So Mugabe, fearing a coup, thought it wise to fire the chief of the army staff, General Constantine Chiwenga. This would be the mistake that would bring down what he had built for over 35 years, as well as bring his presidency to a premature end. The general had earlier on criticized Mugabe, saying the current purging, which is clearly targeting members of the party with a liberation background, must stop forthwith. He also threatened that the army would step in if the purge did not stop. At the time of his firing, Chiwenga was heading back to Zimbabwe from China. On the 12th of November, that same year, as he touched down at Harare Airport, a squadron of police officers waited to arrest him. However, Chiwenga was one step ahead of Mugabe and the First Lady. He had members of the special forces loyal to him disguised as airport maintenance staff. They surrounded the police officers with their weapons drawn. Taken completely by surprise, the police officers were instantly disarmed, detained, and their weapons tucked away. Chiwenga was safely got off the plane and driven straight to the army headquarters in Harare. From there, Chiwenga made calls to Mugabe saying, "What have you done?" In response, Mugabe asked, "What do you mean?" He then asked him why he tried having him arrested. Mugabe feigned ignorance of the unfolding events, and Chiwenga hung up on him in complete anger as he considered this the ultimate betrayal. The following day, he reaches out to Mnangagwa and together with other senior officials, launched Operation Restore Legacy, whose major purpose was to overthrow Mugabe and prevent Grace's appointment. On the 14th of November, Mugabe chaired his last meeting as president with his ministers. The same day, Chiwenga and Mnangagwa overthrew Mugabe in a surprise coup before Grace could be inaugurated as vice president the following day. On the morning of the 21st of November, Zimbabwean deputies, who were strong, staunch supporters of Mugabe, voted to dismiss him from ZANU-PF. That same afternoon, Mugabe resigned for a $10 million signing bonus and a promise that the couple's property would not be seized, ending his 37-year rule of Zimbabwe. The next day, Emmerson Mnangagwa returned to Harare. His first gesture was to reward the three generals who ran the operation. Chiwenga was appointed vice president. Perenti Shiri became the minister of lands. Sibusiso Moyo took over as minister of foreign affairs. To this day, Grace does not understand how the plan could have gone so horribly wrong, despite the fact that he thought it would be meticulously executed. On the 6th of September 2019, Robert Mugabe died at the age of 95 in Glen Eagles Hospital in Singapore. His death would mark the end of the fight between his wife Grace and Emmerson. The government under Mnangagwa wanted Mugabe buried at the National Heroes Acre, where other Zimbabwean heroes lay in peace, something that was contested by Grace as she wanted him buried in his rural home. At the end, he was buried at his courtyard in his rural home in an invite-only burial ceremony attended by 200 people. Mnangagwa was not among those who attended the ceremony. With Mugabe's hosting and eventual death, Grace failed to manage their vast wealth, many of the farms falling into disrepair or being offered up for lease. Ushongo Dairy Farm collapsed after Nestle refused to continue buying milk from the farm. Its farming equipment was auctioned in 2019, some dates while other parts were leased out. At the Grace Mugabe Foundation, the same situation took place. The foundation ended a sizable chunk of the employees' contracts. During Mugabe's land reform in 2000, no individual was allowed to own more than one farm, as per the constitution. Nevertheless, when a land audit was carried out, it was established that Mugabe and his wife had amassed between 13 to 20 farms during his tenure. In 2018, an investigation was launched into Dr. Grace Mugabe's PhD that she had acquired from the University of Zimbabwe in a record time of 3 months, holding the record for the world's shortest time to acquire a PhD. After the investigation, the university vice-chancellor, Levin Agura, was convicted of awarding a fake degree to the former First Lady. In January 2020, a massive exodus of students, teachers, and parents took place at the flagship school, the Amai Mugabe School, citing a wide array of problems ranging from ill treatment to poor working conditions. The STEM program that cost the government over $200,000 annually was shut down by the Mnangagwa administration, hitting a heavy blow to the project. In 2020, Emerson came to the rescue of Grace, where he promulgated a statutory instrument, 261, which stipulated the benefits to be enjoyed by the former First Ladies, and among others, these included first-class trips, an entertainment allowance as determined by the President, a diplomatic passport, and office accommodation as may be determined by the President. All said and done, the story of Grace Mugabe should be a lesson to all current African leaders and First Ladies to be. On the other hand, it paints a picture of politics and business where leaders use their position of power to loot from their countries and create businesses whose survival is based on their stay in power. That is why the richest people in several African states are all either politicians and government officials or relatives of politicians and government officials. The moment they lose political power, the wealth and business they created vanishes with them, and so they try to hang on to power to protect their loot. The fall of Gucci Grace from grace to crass was indeed inevitable after Mugabe's overthrow and eventual death. In politics, unlike religion, the dead do not protect the living. Thank you for listening.